Hello, this is Paul Connett. This is part one of a series of videotapes we've called On the Road to Zero Waste. And we've used that title, On the Road, because zero waste is not going to be achieved overnight. That's why when Canberra, Australia kicked off this strategy, they talked about no waste to landfills by 2010. And when New Zealand, 40% in fact of the municipalities in New Zealand developed zero waste strategies, they too put a time of 2015, I believe it was, for their goal. Zero waste is less about a destination and more about a direction, a new direction, a new attitude, getting rid of this attitude of getting rid of waste to stop making waste in the first place, stop making waste at the front end of the problem. We're beginning our journey in Nova Scotia, and I think that's appropriate because just about 6 years ago, the government there and citizen activists were at loggerheads with what to do about their trash crisis. We're going to hear a little bit about that history and much more about the practical steps that they are now taking on their road to zero waste.
Halifax was in crisis, much like other parts of our province as well and everywhere in the world. In Halifax, our landfill was filling up. And so they went through a number of different processes to site landfills. In almost every case, it was rejected. One of the proposals, and a major proposal that the city was realistically moving towards, was towards incineration. They packaged this as as a safe stream, a safe way of disposing of our waste. We were going to recover energy from it, which was going to be beneficial to us. But the public didn't buy that.
The citizens didn't want an incinerator. We wanted the maximum recycling and composting. We wanted a resource program, not a destructive program.
They developed a community stakeholder committee, and it's the stakeholders that, the community, that actually designed the process. They looked at all of the elements. They were supported with engineers and engineering consultants that gave them all the statistics and the data they needed, but it was really the community that was producing the waste that had to make the decision. And they essentially decided that if we as a community want to do the right thing, we're going to have to recover as much of the resources out of our waste as possible.
We found that since the problem in the landfill is the putrescibles, the things that stink and cause the carbon dioxide, cause the methane, cause the odors, cause the leachate, that's all the food waste and other organics going into the landfill. That's the real problem, plus the toxics are a small part of it. The only way to get the putrescibles all the way out is a combination of recycling and composting programs.
We recognize that we're still going to need a landfill at this point in time, but let's make it the safest, cleanest, most efficient landfill as possible. Eventually we may not need a landfill at all.
The citizens group had, instead of a waste management strategy, we had a waste resource management strategy. We've crossed out the waste, it's a resource. We have to think about it. Resource management, not waste management.
By adopting this name resource, we're starting to think, and we'll change the whole mindset. It's no longer a waste, that it is now a resource that we can recover. For the compostable streams, we can compost everything that is organic. Everything that can be composted in a centralized composting facility. And every homeowner has been issued one of these containers, as well as a larger container on wheels that is outside.
In Halifax, every 2 weeks, the source-separated organic waste consisting of yard clippings, food scraps, and soil paper is picked up by special trucks and taken to one of 2 large composting facilities. Once the vehicles arrive, they are weighed in, The organic waste is dumped onto a tipping floor. Front-end loaders shift it to conveyor belts. From there it is screened by 3 or 4 workers who pull out large bulky items, and particularly plastic bags. From there it is shredded, passed under magnets, up a conveyor belt, dumped into the second part of the building, which is the processing area. Here it is loaded into a huge vessel and composted with the Ibarra system. This system comprises of a huge steel paddle which is put into the material every day, and after 28 days it has shifted the material on the front of the vessel to the rear of the vessel. Material is then transferred to the curing area and stored in huge piles. These piles are shifted 3 or 4 times over a period of 45 to 60 days. After curing, the material is screened and the fine material is compost ready for market. We're standing in front of the recycling plant for Halifax, Nova Scotia, and here they separate the curbside collected recyclables, things like corrugated cardboard and newspaper and box board, and of course the bottles and cans.
We have a sorting system for paper. We take off cardboard by hand, open all the bags by hand, and the equipment itself sorts newspaper from mixed paper. So we produce mixed paper, newspaper, and cardboard from that line. In the other part of the plant, we sort the blue bags, which are mixed containers. They get pushed onto a conveyor belt, go through a bag breaker, which shreds the bags, and then it goes up to the sort line where we sort off by hand all the products we want. We have a magnet that takes off the tin cans, and then we have sorters that take off milk cartons, plastic bottles, plastic tubs, deposit-bearing beverage containers, glass bottles and jars, and aluminum cans and pie plates.
Not all the beverage containers are handled in these recycling plants. Those which have a deposit on them are taken back by citizens to the Enviro depots, of which there are 95 in the province.
98% of the residents live within 20 kilometers of an Enviro depot, so everybody has access to them to take the containers back, and they actually result in the highest return rate of all the containers we get.
We recycle plastics, cans, bottles, aluminum, steel, beer bottles, pretty much everything that you drink other than milk products we do here.
And how do you collect them?
Well, if you were to go to the grocery store and buy a bottle of pop, you pay a 10-cent deposit, and you would bring it back to me, and I would give you your 5 cents.
And what happens to the other 5 cents?
Well, I get a portion of it, and the recycling refund board in Nova Scotia, the other portion goes to them, and it goes into processing and trucking and other fees like that. Aside from beverage containers, we also take corrugated cardboard and newsprint and car batteries.
Oh. Not all the household hazardous waste ends up in these Enviro depots. Most of it is taken to household hazardous waste collection sites. This household hazardous waste drop-off site is located in Halifax and is open nearly every Saturday from 9 to 4. Householders don't even have to get out of their cars. A team of workers remove a whole series of hazardous materials, including paint, batteries, cleaners, varnishes, propane tanks, and so on. In one section, liquids such as transmission fluids, antifreeze, and used motor oil are drained, and the more reactive and corrosive materials are handled separately in a small building located at the periphery of the site.
We break them down into the different chemical families depending on where they're and how they're to be disposed of, and how dangerous they are. Some will react with others. Old people, if this wasn't here, they'd just be chucking it in the garbage or out in the field somewhere, and the environment has got enough problems. We don't need that.
Those which are not currently being reused, recycled, composted, or dropped off at a household hazardous waste collection site are called residuals. The residuals come to this facility behind me. It's called a front-end processing facility, and here they take out corrugated cardboard, they take objects, they take out newspaper, they take off office paper, they take out some beverage containers, and then the rest, which contains organic waste, is shredded and goes through a composting operation, not to produce a product to sell, because this is contaminated stuff. It's got all kinds of stuff in it, plastic and glass and so on, for 21 days in a composting operation, and then it's that material that eventually ends up in the landfill. I have visited hundreds of landfills worldwide. This is the first landfill I've ever been to without odor. And there's further confirmation that they've done a good job of stabilizing the organics, keeping the most of the organics out of this landfill, first with the composting operation with source-separated organic material, and then a second composting operation to stabilize the organics in the residuals. The other evidence that they've done a good job is you birds here, not the thousands of seagulls or vultures and crows that you see at most landfills. The other thing which is remarkable is even though they've screened out a vast majority of the toxics and they've stabilized the organics and they've kept most of the organics out of there, it's still a double line leachate collection and finally leachate treatment. So they've got the backup of a modern landfill design on top of front-end processing.
We recognize that we could help our environment and our economy. Jobs are very important in Nova Scotia. We're a small province and we need to ensure that we're sustainable.
Using the funds generated by the deposit container take-back system, the Nova Scotia government has helped set up a number of job-creating industries which can recycle and sell the recovered resources from the waste stream. One of those companies is Atlantic Recycled Rubber, which is selected from throughout the province.
When a consumer goes in to buy a tire, depending upon the size of that tire, they would pay either a $3 or $9 fee on that tire. And that allows us to go in and collect those tires at the retail level, bring them to a processing center, which is just located outside of Tricia. And they basically take all those tires, and there's about 800,000 tires a year, and process those tires into crumb, varying grades of crumb. And that crumb is sold as a commodity in commodity markets in North America.
The first thing that happens to the tires when they arrive is that they go through this massive shredder which can handle up to 600 tires an hour. The result of the shredding operation is about 2 inches in diameter. These are then fed into a tunnel cooled with liquid nitrogen. This brings the temperature down of the chunks to about minus 100 degrees Celsius. And this makes them extremely brittle, so that when they fall through a hammer mill, they shatter like china. The little pieces are rub belts, the nylon fluff is sucked off, and the steel pieces are removed with a belt magnet. The crumb rubber particles move through the system through more cleaning operations which remove more of the nylon fluff, more of the pieces of steel, and the crumb rubber particle with sizing operations, eventually leading to these 6 silos containing crumb rubber particles of different mesh sizes. What are the uses for this rubber that you produce?
We supply worldwide a company called Field Turf that make the world soccer fields, baseball fields, football fields, golf courses. One of the other big things that we do is outside running tracks or indoor running tracks made of rubber. This is a major product that's going into indoor running tracks and outdoor for the person that is running, plus the ease of maintenance.
What about the use of rubber, crumb rubber in asphalt?
That is probably the most up-and-coming marketplace. I believe one of its downfalls or roadblocks has been the asphalt industry itself. That really don't was in there because of the time that they will last so much longer than natural materials that are available. I believe that'll take some implementation of the government's forcing a warranty on the roads, and companies that have to take out insurance to warranty their roads or their road work will be looking at a higher grade material to put into.
What about recycling the crumb rubber back to the tire manufacturer themselves?
Yes, that's being done right now. Goodyear, Michelin, Continental, all of them are using a portion of recycled rubber.
Oh, they are?
Oh, yes. Yeah. A product made with recycled materials is as good as one that isn't. And by operations such as this that are producing a high manufacture, the comfort level he needs to say, I can make a high quality product with it now.
We have the capability in Nova Scotia now to process all the newspaper and all the corrugated cardboard generated in Nova Scotia and more.
One of Nova Scotia's largest paper recyclers is Minas Basin. Distance in the 1920s, and then they were handling wood, virgin materials, and converting that into cardboard. And then in the 60s and 70s, they started to introduce recycled cardboard into their process. And in 1985, they switched over completely to recycled cardboard. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, we saw of the corrugated cardboard, the box board, including the beer containers and so on. We saw that being separated. It comes up here and is converted into new paper, new cardboard for new boxes. They produce about 260 tons a day, and one of these rolls is about 2. Standing next to the Minas Basin Company is the Crown Fibre Tube Corporation. This company takes the 2-ton paper rolls from Minas, slices them into strips about 8 inches wide, and converts these strips into long tubes. And these tubes are used to wrap carpets around. This company conserving resources, but is creating good jobs in the process. Maritime Paper is another company that uses the recycled paper from Minas Basin. Maritime produces the same corrugated cardboard boxes that we saw being separated and the Halifax recycling plant, and the very same boxes which Minas Basin uses to make its paper. Thus we see here an example of closing the loop, where a raw material is used to make a product, and then the product is used to make the raw material again and again. Another magnificent example of closing the loop is the reuse of the beer bottle. In Canada, all beer bottles are of one standard size. They are washed and refilled and used again and again. In Ontario, the beer store claims that the little beer bottle is 2 cents, whereas a disposable one costs 13 cents. In the province of Nova Scotia, between 96 and 98% of their beer bottles are being recaptured and reused. Another business which is turning discarded materials into saleable products and which has received a recovery fund is the Renovators Resource.
I've been in business since 1994, and the impetus for our business, my partner Jennifer Corson and I didn't really know each other before we started in this business, but we met through a mutual acquaintance, and we had both had an interest in renovating, and I came at it from a homeowner's point of view, and she came at my point of view. You know, some of the more common products that we would get here would be doors, lots and lots of doors, so doors on their own, and also with hardware, so door hinges, mortise sets, knobs, and those are things that we see a lot of. Also sell stair parts, spindles, newel posts, railings, pedestal sinks, the freestanding old-fashioned porcelain or else cast iron with them. And we also sell a lot of the freestanding old-fashioned cast iron bathtubs with the feet on the bottom. This is our line of furniture that we make out of our salvage materials. So, for example, we have this cabinet, which we call our wall cabinet, and it's came out of finding a way of dealing with all these little multi-pane windows that we have that isn't anymore because they're not very energy efficient. Now, these are what we call our column cabinets, and for these, sometimes we will take a 4-panel door and cut it down the middle, so to make 4 smaller doors out of a 4-panel door, and we'll use the smaller panels at the bottom for low cabinets and the taller panels for tall cabinets. This door is actually the end of a pew. Pews were made in 1842, so they were beautiful, beautiful wood. Anyway, so we've used the ends of the pews for doors. And the other thing that we do with the pews is we use the seats of the pews, which were beautiful old hand-planed pine boards, and we use those to make harvest tables, and I think this is out of those pew seats.
While Renovator's resource offers an exciting example of the reuse of materials and objects from old buildings, currently the handling of construction and demolition debris is a weak spot in the Nova Scotia program. Much of the C&D waste is being stockpiled, some is being shredded for landfill cover, and some of it is...
I was perhaps the main citizen activist proposing the system we have today, and particularly the compost component of it. And I'm delighted that we have today. I am so proud of the role of the citizens and that the government finally accepted it. But we can do better.
We still have some improvements to make regarding quality of compost in the province, and I think that's borne out by the nature of the material that we're seeing from the facilities out there right now.
So sad to see municipal composting groups come out with compost like this sample from one, which simply is too immature. It hasn't cured long enough. They're still looking at it as a issue more than creating something that would really grow good plants in.
We're to a stage now where we have and are collecting organic material, processing it to the point where we have a semi-stable material. My influence is directed at trying to carry it that one step further to the point we can be proud of, and also will, in fact, demand a higher price based on its nutritional value and its water retention capacity and its basic texture.
Currently, 72% of Nova Scotians have access to curbside collection of organics. That's not necessarily a good thing. Being wheeled bins throughout very rural areas of collecting organics and then sending it to a city for composting simply doesn't make any sense.
The more compost sites you have, the easier it's going to be for the local municipalities and the local residents to feel that they have more responsibility for quality materials and using them locally, and that will cut down on the transportation costs particularly and the environmental cost of hauling.
Eventually we should work on the premise of working towards a monthly collection of garbage and a weekly collection of organic material. Simply because it's relatively self-policing to an extent. If people have a garbage that is creating odor, that is noisome, is creating a nuisance, chances are it has in it organic material that should be in the green cart. And I think by working in that direction, we can establish a much more effective organic waste management system within the province.
What's the thing that's made you most upset since you...
Well, I guess the one thing that would probably, I don't know if it upsets me, but I guess it maybe disturbs me more than any is that, the fact that industry hasn't come forth voluntarily in most cases to develop in conjunction with the RFB in the province and the municipalities. And I've been disappointed in most cases by the response of industry.
One of the one of the problems we have in the composting industry is too much plastic going through our system. And a lot of that is due to plastic bags, which, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Go to a grocery store and take a reusable bag and not have it have a plastic bag. But there's other packages such as frozen food boxes that have a paper or plastic liner. They're creating a bit of a problem right now. We'd like to see more research and more work done into developing packages that are completely biodegradable. The technology is out there. It's just trying to get industry to take street, and that they're going to have to do it.
The largest number one piece of trash in Nova Scotia is that you find in the ditch along the highway is the Tim Hortons cup, which is not recyclable. McDonald's in the western part of the States is working with a company called Earthshell, so that the styrofoam clamshell, the coffee cup, something that's based on starch, limestone, organic resins, and this material is compostable. What we've got to get is manufacturers to start making containers and packages that we can recycle, that are compostable.
And the role of government really should be to focus on the manufacturing side of things and saying to people who are making, you need to be responsible for that product from the moment you manufacture it and all the waste that you generate in manufacturing it. But plus, that product is going to go to someone's house, be used, and then what happens to it? Then it becomes all of our problems, and it's the public funds that go towards dealing with that problem, as opposed to the manufacturing or the you know, when you're finished with your product, send it back to us, and we will deal with it. We will take apart the component parts, we'll remanufacture them, or melt them down and use them again. And that's really, ultimately, if we're going to reduce the waste, that's what has to happen, is that the people who manufacture the waste in the first place need to be responsible for dealing with it, because then it becomes part of the economics, that the economics of the disposal of properties.
There's a lot of positive things to say about this program. They have the curbside recycling, the curbside collection of compostables. They have the drop-off system for the containers with the deposit on them. And we've seen money for innovation. We've seen a very convenient, regular drop-off of household hazardous waste on Saturdays. We've seen some very exciting industries growing up using some of these secondary materials, like the tire recycling plant. We've seen some exciting reuse operations, particularly the Renovators Resource, particularly exciting. So lots of very positive things. The thing which I was most excited about was to see a dream come true, because for many, many years I've been suggesting that you can't control what comes out of landfills, you've got to control what goes in. So after they've done their best at recycling, reuse, and drop off, they don't send the residues straight to the landfill. Instead, they take it to a front-end processing facility, and we saw that in operation, and we stood in the landfill and we couldn't smell it, and there weren't many birds around, so they're doing a pretty good job. But to go that one stage further, they need to go medicines to take them further, and get closer and closer to zero waste. And of course, when we use the word zero waste, the community cannot do it alone. We need community responsibility, we need industrial responsibility for better design for the 21st century, and we need the two to come together. We can only do that with good, in my view, good government leadership means working with the citizens. This is Paul Connett.